Today we're going to read from a book of fairy tales, and the tale today is called Oh Luckoie, or the Dustman. Oh Luckoie, the sleepy dustman, knows the most wonderful stories in the world. When the children are sitting quietly at the table or on their little chairs, he comes up very softly and throws magic dust in their eyes. Then he breathes on their necks, and they feel so sleepy. But he does them no harm. It is only that they must be quiet, so that he can tell them his stories. When they are asleep, the dustman sits on the bed. His coat is of silk and changes color constantly. Now green, now red, now blue. Under each arm he holds an umbrella. One umbrella has pictures on it, and the dustman holds it over good children. Then they sleep sweetly and have delightful dreams. The other umbrella has no pictures, and this he holds over naughty children. They sleep heavily and wake having had no dreams at all. Here are 7 stories that the dustman told to a little boy called Hyalmar. Old Luckoie came every evening for a whole week to Halimar. There are 7 stories because the week has 7 days. Listen to me, said old Luckoie, as soon as he had got Halimar into his bed. First I will decorate your room. As he spoke, the flowers in pots beside the bed grew right up and made the bedroom into a bower. Branches grew up the walls and along the ceiling. These branches were full of sweet-smelling flowers, beautiful shining fruits, and lovely little dumplings full of currants. At the same time, a moaning and groaning could be heard from the drawer in the bedside table. In there was Halimar's slate, with the pencil to write on and the sponge to clean it off. The numbers in the sum written on the slate were pushing and shoving. Halimar had put in a wrong figure, and the other numbers were trying to squeeze it out. The pencil jumped about like a little dog trying to help. Near the slate lay Halimar's copybook. The moaning and groaning came from the book. Halimar's writing was dreadfully crooked, and all the letters were falling over and bumping into each other. The copy letter at the beginning of each line taught the others. This is the way to stand, said the copy letter. Oh, but we can't, moaned Halimar's letters, falling about and slipping off the lines. We're so badly made. Then you shall have some of the children's medicine, said the copy letter. Oh, no, cried the naughty crooked letters, and they all stood up on the lines beautifully straight. Now, I cannot tell you any more stories, said the dustman. I must drill these letters. Left, right, left, right, left, right. So he drilled the letters until they were absolutely as perfect as the copy letter. But when Halimar peeped into his book in the morning, the letters were as miserably bad as before. Tuesday. As soon as Halimar was in bed the next night, the dustman touched all the pieces of furniture in the room. The pieces of furniture began to talk, and they all talked about nothing but themselves. There was a big painting in the room. It was a landscape. In it were tall trees, flowers, a wood, and a splendid castle. Also a river that flowed down to the sea. The dustman touched the picture with his wand, and the whole thing came alive. The birds sang, the trees rustled and waved their branches, and the clouds and shadows flew across the landscape. Then the dustman lifted little Halimar up to the picture, and the little boy put his legs inside the frame. There he stood in the grass. He ran down to the river and sat in a little red and white boat. It had silk sails and was drawn by 6 swans. The swans had golden wreaths round their slender necks and blue stars on their heads. Along the river, the trees told stories about robbers and witches. The flowers told fairy tales and talked of what the butterflies had sent to them. Gorgeous fishes with glittering gold or silver scales swam beside the boat, and sometimes leapt into the air so that the water splashed over Halimar's head. The cockchafers opened their golden wings and said, "Boom, boom!" They all wanted to go with Halimar, and each had a long story to tell. It was a pleasant sail. Palaces of marble or glass stood near the river, and in the palaces were little princesses. The princesses were all little girls that Halimar knew well. He had played with them. They offered him pretty sugar toys. Each castle had a little prince on guard outside. The princes had sabers of gold, and they threw Halimar handfuls of raisins and tin soldiers. They were truly princes. The Dustman told stories to the flowers and birds and beasts as well. Wednesday. Oh, how it poured with rain. Halimar could hear it even in his sleep. When the Dustman opened the window, the water came up to the ledge, and there was a large lake outside. On the lake was a magnificent ship. Would you like to be a voyager, little Halimar? Asked old Luckoie. You can visit foreign lands in the night and be back next morning. Halimar was so excited that he could only laugh and nod his head. Suddenly the little boy found himself in his best Sunday suit. The weather cleared miraculously, and there he was in the great ship, sailing down the streets near his house, round the church, and out to the wide sea. Halimar was amazed. He could not quite believe this was happening to him. Soon they could see no dry land, only a flock of great white storks. The storks had flown from Denmark, where Halimar lived, and were going to the warm land. They flew one behind the other and had already flown far, so far. Little Halimar thought he had never before seen such a wonderful sight. Then he noticed that one young stork was so weary that he could fly no farther. His wings could scarcely hold him up. The others left him far behind, and he sank lower and lower. His wings touched the ship's rigging. He slid down the sail and landed, flop, on the deck. The ship's boy put the stork in the poultry pen where the hens, duck, and turkeys were kept. The poor stork stood among all the birds, looking quite confused. How they clucked, quacked, and gobbled. He is so stupid, so stupid. What charming, slender legs you have, garbled one of the turkeys. How much did they cost a yard? Quack, quack, giggled the duck. But the young stork hung his head sadly. The poultry made a shocking noise with their amusement, and the young stork looked very unhappy. Halimar could stand the noise no longer and went to the poultry pen. He opened the door and let out the stork. The stork was rested now, and he thanked Halimar for helping him by bowing deeply before he flew away. Halimar watched as the stork flew until he was so far away that he was just a speck in the sky. Then he turned to the hens, duck, and turkeys and looked quite crossly at them. You shall all be made into soup tomorrow, he said to the noisy poultry. As he said it, he woke and was surprised to find himself in his own bed. What a strange journey the dustman had taken him that night. Thursday. Look, said old Luckoie to Halimar, do not be frightened, and you shall see a little mouse. He held the pretty little creature out on his hand. She has come to invite you to a wedding, the dustman continued. 2 mice live here, and they wish to set up house together. These mice live under the floor of your mother's larder. It seems a most delicious home. Oh, I should like to go to a mouse wedding, said Halimar, but how shall I get into a tiny mouse hole? Leave it to me, said the dustman. I will make you very tiny. He touched Halimar with his magic wand, and the little boy shrank until he was the size of a finger. Halimar felt very strange being so small, but he knew that he could trust old Luckoie. Now, said the dustman, you shall borrow one of your tin soldier's uniforms. It looks so smart to wear a uniform when one is in society, especially at a wedding. Oh, yes, agreed Halimar, and in a second he was dressed like the smartest little tin soldier. The little boy marched up and down, then stood at attention just to show old Luckoie what a good soldier he was. Would you be so kind as to sit in your mother's thimble? Asked the mouse. It will be like a little carriage, and I will be honored to draw you to the wedding. Will you really give yourself so much trouble? Said Halimar, and in his carriage he was taken to the ceremony. Does not it smell nice? Said the mouse that pulled the thimble. The passage is all decorated with bacon rind. What could be better? Halimar thought the decorations very strange, but did not say so to the little mouse. They went along a corridor under the floor. It was lighted by burning tinder torches and was just tall enough for the thimble carriage to pass through. When they arrived at the room where the wedding was to be held, all the lady mice stood on their right, whispering and giggling together. On the left stood all the gentleman mice, stroking their whiskers with their paws. In the middle stood the bride and groom, kissing and cuddling each other all the time. There was a dreadful squeezing and pushing of mice during the ceremony. The room was decorated with bacon rind, and this was all they ate. But for pudding they had a dried pea, into which the young mice of the family had nibbled the initials of the bridal couple. Such a charming idea! All the mice said that the wedding had been most refined. Halimar then went home in his little carriage. He had enjoyed the wedding very much, and felt he had been in a very distinguished company, but was not quite sure that it was not a little inferior to become so small and have to borrow a uniform from one of the tin soldiers. Friday. It is amazing, said the dustman, how many grown-up people want me to come to them at night, especially if they've been wicked. They complain of bad dreams and offer me money, but I do not come for money. Where are we going tonight, please? Asked Halimar. Maybe you would care to go to another wedding, replied old Luckoie. Your sister's big doll Bertha is to marry Herman, the large gentleman doll. Oh, yes, I know that, said Halimar. When the dolls need new clothes, my sister makes them have a wedding, or says it's their birthday. It's happened 100 times. Ah, but tonight is their 101st wedding. After that there can be no more, said the dustman, and it will be a wonderful wedding. Halimar looked at the table where the doll's house stood. All the windows were alight inside, and outside the tin soldiers stood and presented arms. The bride and groom sat on the floor, leaning against the table leg, and looked very thoughtful. Perhaps they had cause to do so. Now the dustman put on his grandmother's black gown and married the dolls. When the ceremony was over, all the furniture in the doll's house sang this song which had been written by the lead pencil. We sing a song of kind farewell as a wedding surprise for the beau and belle. With their kid leather skin and glassy stare, straight as a yardstick stand the pair. Hooray, hurrah, now sing together with all your breath for wood and leather. Then the couple were given their present. However, they would not accept anything eatable. Love was enough for them to live upon. And when the dolls had decided where to go for their honeymoon, the wedding was over. Saturday. Now may I have some stories? Asked little Halimar as soon as the dustman had put him to bed. We have to be quick this evening, said the dustman, spreading his beautiful picture umbrella over the little boy. Look at these Chinamen. The umbrella was just like a big Chinese bowl with a pattern of blue trees and little pointed bridges that arched over the river. Little Chinese men and women stood holding their heads. Then the picture faded. Tomorrow, said the dustman, it is a feast day. It is Sunday. Before then, all the world must be put in order. I must go to the church tower and see that the little church goblins are polishing the bells properly to make them ring well with a beautiful sound. I must go to the fields and see that the wind is blowing all the dust off the grass and leaves. I must take down the stars in order that I may brighten them up. This is my most difficult job. First I have to number all the stars, then I put them into my apron. The holes that the stars came from must be numbered too, so that they are all put back in their proper places. They must fit firmly, or we shall have too many shooting stars falling in the sky. Now listen to me, Mr. Old Luckoie, said the old portrait that hung on the wall in Halimar's bedroom near his bed. Do you know that I am little Halimar's great-grandfather? Old Halimar looked up at the portrait and nodded. It is very kind of you to tell the boy stories, continued the portrait, but you must not muddle him by talking nonsense. The stars cannot be taken down and polished. They are spheres like our earth. That is absolutely correct. Thank you, old great-grandfather, replied the dustman. Many thanks. You are indeed the head of the family, and very old. But I am older still. I am an old pagan. The Greeks and Romans called me the god of dreams. I have been into the greatest houses in the world, and I go there still. I know how to keep company with old and young, great and small. Now it is your turn. Say what you like." And old Luckoie went away carrying his umbrella. "You see, it is no longer possible to say what one thinks," muttered the old portrait. And soon Halimar woke up. Sunday. "Good evening," said the dustman, and Halimar bowed to him, then jumped quickly out of bed and turned the portrait of his great-grandfather to face the wall. "Now you can tell me about the 5 green peas who lived in a pod," said, "and Cocky who courted Henny Penny, and the darning needle who thought she was a fine embroidery needle." "No one can have too much of a good thing," said the dustman. "I will show you my brother. He never comes more than once to anyone. Whomsoever he visits, he takes up on his beautiful horse and tells him a story. He only knows 2 stories. One story is marvelously beautiful, and the other is horrible beyond description." And the dustman lifted Halimar into a window sill and said, "There's my brother, the other dustman. He is called Death. You see, he is not frightening at all, as he seems in picture books. Look at his beautiful silver-embroidered uniform and his fine black cloak floating out behind him. See how swiftly his horse gallops." And Halimar saw the other dustman ride by. He took old and young on his horse, and they all had to show him their books. Those who had very good or excellent would put in front of him and heard the beautiful story, but those who had mediocre or bad went up behind him and had to listen to the horrible story, no matter how they shouted or tried to jump down. "Death is a very beautiful dustman," said Halimar. "I am not afraid of him." "No, you must not be frightened of him," said old Luckoie, "but you must be careful to have a good report to show him." "This is very instructional," said the portrait of the old great-grandfather. "I approve. It all comes from giving my opinion." He was contented. These are the stories of the dustman. Perhaps he will come and tell you a story tonight. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you for watching.